Hello and welcome back to the DP World Tour Picks and Bets show. This is the first show for 2025 and as you may see on your screen already, we do not have Skylar Hope with us, but we do have our trusty fill-in, Ryan Baroff. Ryan, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Tom. Happy to be here and looking forward to 2025.
Absolutely. Happy New Year to yourself. I hope it's one filled with winning golf bets as we go through 2025. Any luck so far on the early PGA Tour events?
Yeah, Nick Taylor, quite good yesterday. That was a gift. You know, I felt really good about him, and then when he missed a 3-footer and a 4-footer on the back nine on Sunday, I thought we were back to 2024. But no, that guy has some stones.
And I think one thing, and look, it's not completely irrelevant to what we're talking about here. I think people probably underestimate what a reset can do, right? Like a 4 to 6 week break. Nick Taylor, quite a few months since he had a top 20 going into that Sony Open, fantastic course record. Obviously a player that when he gets to a certain number, we just have to look at, right? And, you know, I wasn't one of them that kind of took that swing, but I think it's going to sort of tell you, because we've got a lot of players here that won't have played anything in January. Had a couple that have played the Hawaii events, some of the PGA Tour regulars, right? But really important to kind of suss out what people have been doing in the off season and how that can relate to them, you know, kickstarting things quickly, because we used to have this event the week following the Abu Dhabi Championship. That's now changing the schedule. Do you factor any of that in when you make your picks, or do you just make your picks based on kind of who you like in the week?
Yeah, I mean, I think these events that we played down in South Africa, I think we're close enough in time that like I will definitely still look at them. I think as we saw at the beginning, really the last couple of years though, like one of the trends that we've seen is these guys coming off of Q school and the very top of the Challenge Tour graduates, like that stuff seems to translate really well. You know, we saw it with Riggs Johnson, right? This year. I remember last year it was, you know, Nathan Kimsey. We saw Angel Ayora have some really good finishes. Rasmus Niergaard, like these guys are going to be good. So I'm going to try and catch them early and often.
I think one of the things that slightly like skews that, because obviously that obviously appeals to the South African swing, the Australian swing, and then you come into this event and you've just got all the heavy hitters in one go, like Rory McIlroy, Jordan Rahm, Tyrrell Hatton, Tommy Fleetwood, Victor Hovland. There's something to be said for this is probably arguably the best event we're going to get for a while on the DP World Tour, right? And it's almost a shame that it comes so early, because we've got some players that won't really have got into the rhythm and things like that. But then you've got kind of the guys like Rory McIlroy that are just going to come here and play well every year, regardless of what they've done in the off season as well.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And definitely looking forward to the top of this board. You know, I found it really interesting that Rahm hasn't played here before. I had to sort of triple check that because it didn't make a lot of sense. But I guess he likes his off season and he's in Arizona usually. So makes sense.
that as soon as you said that, I then went and double checked it again just to make sure. It's pretty crazy, and I guess that's, you know, why you've got a little bit of a buffer between the two. Plus, also Rory's just unbelievable at this golf course, right? But do we think now the kind of dust has settled on his first season on Live? Like, are we expecting more from Rahm this season now that things are kind of looking like they're going to go into a bit of a pact? Are we imagining that he's going to have a really hot start like he normally does at the start of the year?
I think so. You know, he definitely had stuff going on last year with his family and wife's pregnancy and stuff like that, and just still adjusting to life on Live. But again, he had a really good year. Like he was the best. He was the best player on Live. He just underperformed in majors, and that's, you know, he's at that level where that's where he's going to be judged now. So yeah, I certainly I don't have any issue with Rahm this year. I definitely think it'll be a solid year for him.
Yeah, and like you say, I think that one of the things was one of the stuff, the off-course issue. He had the injury and he missed the US Open, right, for the foot injury, I think it was. And also, I just think he's a guy that I think likes to be liked. And I think he was having a difficult time adjusting to the fact that people were a little bit against him. With all that said, Brian, we've got, you know, Rory, Rahm, Tyrrell Hatton, Tommy Fleetwood, Victor Hovland, all here.
Yep.
The first name I'm a little bit concerned about, I know he's won here in the past, but Victor Hovland, another swing coach again. So he, if I remember rightly, he switched back to his old coach just before the PGA, played well, and now he switched again to, I don't know, I can't remember his name, the guy, but it's an American guy, I think, that he hasn't worked with before. He's been through like 4 swing coaches in the last year.
Yeah, kind of what Viktor Hovland does, right? Especially this time of year. It seems like every year, every January where we come back to Viktor Hovland, we're talking about a change, a swing change, a coaching change, a short game change, whatever it is. But I mean, I think when you just zoom out, he just hasn't been that good, all right, for a number of reasons. For him recently, it's been that the short game has kind of regressed a lot back to where it was. And yeah, even though he's won here, I think he's definitely, one tier below the top 4 guys here. I have zero interest. Yeah.
Yeah, like he's 18-1, and then you've got kind of Fleetwood Hatton 11 and 10-1. But
yeah,
what number would Rory have had to have been for you to bet him?
I was not far off. And as we get into this and talk about our cards, I did bet in the market without Rory and those guys intentionally. I mean, I was close. He's obviously sort of locked in for a top 10 here. I would probably rather just bet that. Like, he's probably minus 200 or minus 210 for a top 10. He's never finished outside the top 10 here in a decade. Like, that might be the direction to go. But I just don't bet guys 3-1. It's just not good practice.
Yeah, I think like if you're a long time listener of this show, we're more likely to tip 1,000 to 1 shot than we are a 4-1 shot, which is probably dumb.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. I must admit though, like, close. Like, I always feel like he's slightly better value on the DP World Tour than he is the PGA Tour. Which is fairly understandable. I just feel like it's so hard to see him beating Scheffler, and all those kind of people in the same week and at similar odds. Whereas like him, I know he's got to take on Rahm, Hatton, and Fleetwood here, but like it just feels like he's going to come out and win this.
Yeah, I didn't bet any of these guys. I was probably closer on Hatton than anybody else. I'm just super bullish on him this year. He's got a pretty solid course history here, just hasn't won, and he's just sort of elevated himself in terms of his consistency. Like he's top 5 everywhere he shows up, anywhere in the world, any tour. He's a top 5 player right now. So
yeah, like he was definitely the closest for me, and the fact that you look, he's got 4 top 10 finishes as golf course. He's had a couple of starts where he could have, finished inside the top 10 again and just sort of faded away over the weekend. Like he is that player. Whereas Fleetwood hasn't got a great record here, which is surprising considering how good he is. I know he's had a couple of occasions where he's been inside the top 3 or inside the top 5 going into the weekend, drifted, going Sunday in 7th place and stuff and falling away. Like he's definitely had chances, right? But it's strange to me that he can't put 4 rounds together, especially because everyone will go, oh, well, if the wind gets up in Dubai, that's going to really suit Fleetwood. It never does. Like it's weird.
Yeah, I mean, and you can take stats with a grain of salt, but it seems like he's been fine here. He can't putt here. And maybe it's the wind, maybe it's the greens, but I mean, I would not be surprised to see him 3rd on Sunday, obviously. And if he can get a couple putts to fall, like he's got a great chance to win too.
Absolutely. Next tier of guys here: Rasmus Højgaard, Robert McIntyre, Adam Scott. I guess we'll throw in Dean Burmester as well. Were you close to any of those guys?
No, I would say Rasmus is probably the closest one. I don't know what numbers you had on Nakajima. He's probably a bit deeper, but like he was one that certainly interested me in this sort of middle tier. But McIntyre seems a little burned out from the PGA schedule and traveling. Burmester probably a little bit too short here, and he tends only to pop when he goes back home and things like that. Rasmus is very interesting. He had a really solid end of the year. In full disclosure, didn't pay really close attention to the Team Cup last week. I bet the GB&I team, which seemed very easy, but it seemed like Rasmus played okay in his matches. So I think he would be the one that I have the most interest in. No McIntyre, no Burmester for me.
The consensus was that he basically had to carry around Rasmus Højgaard Petersen, who he probably wouldn't have been partnered with if Nikolai Højgaard wasn't ill a couple of days before the event. So I think that is hard. One, it's hard to really know how much value to put on the Team Cup. We've done it before. We've fallen in traps with like Max Homer playing well at the President's Cup, and then he's going to come out and play well on the PGA Tour. And he did, right? Like he did play okay. And it's funny because we sort of discussed Rasmus Højgaard on the podcast yesterday of like, there's this perception around him that he struggles to win. And it's weird because he's got, 5 or 6 DP World Tour wins already in his career. I think it's 5. It's ahead of his brother in that respect. But like, I think the perception is built around Whereas like Nikolai's now gone over to the PGA Tour, whereas some of the other heavy hitters like Robert McIntyre have gone and got a couple of wins on the PGA Tour, he's been stuck in the DP World Tour.
Yeah.
And he's put himself in so many positions and struggled that it's just a case, I guess, of being there so often. It's a little bit like Rory McIlroy, and people say, oh, he's a joker, and it's because he's in contention every single time he plays and he's going to lose a certain amount of them, right? Like I think it's a little bit of that at the DP World Tour level. He's obviously the most talented player of the DP World Tour regulars, I guess.
And I have no evidence off the top of my head to support this, but it seems like he's had some close calls against like really good players. Like I know he finished second to Rory at the end of the year. He finished second to Olesen last year. He lost to Rio. I just feel like he's been close and just sort of run into guys who we expect to win. So.
Yeah, and also on the flip side of that, like he's come up clutch against Rory McIlroy in the Irish Open. Like it's a big win. So there's probably a bit of unfair discourse around Rasmus Højgaard. I've been in it. I've kind of given up on him a little bit. But the one that I've kind of gone a bit full 360 on, I haven't bet him, but like I feel like Robert McIntyre's trajectory's changed. And I think
absolutely, yeah.
And that's look, it's not a hot take or anything like that, but I was always a little bit critical of Bob, and I think the worst thing that ever happened to him, like personally and feeling wise, is that he feels like he now has to play the PGA Tour because he's got those couple of wins. Like I think he'd love to be back here playing on the DP World Tour, but the fact that he's got those wins and then run with it, got the Canadian Open, got the Scottish Open, which would have meant a whole lot to him considering what happened to him the year before.
Yep.
The way he's done that is really encouraging. He's obviously going to be on the the short list for Ryder Cup players and things like that. And this course he's finished 3rd and 8th here, so I was really close to him. I would say it was Hatton and McIntyre that I was close to. Hatton at 10-1, McIntyre at 22. Like that would be the closest I got. I didn't get there on either, but I think it's worth discussing some of those players based on sort of the opinions we have on them.
Yeah, definitely with McIntyre, it's going to come down to his putting, as it always does, because when he wins, he putts great, and when he doesn't, he putts very, very badly. And a little concerned that this is now his 3rd week in a row coming from Hawaii.
Yeah,
he kind of tailed off over the weekend at Sony after I think he had like a 68 start or something like that. But just a little concerned about that piece of it for him, and versus the guys who were here playing the Team Cup.
For sure, and I think like. For me, if I'm thinking about comps of someone that could go on and do what McIntyre has done in the last year and the expectations of what they are at this level, like I think a lot of people expect Minwoo Lee to do what McIntyre has done, like go and get a couple of PGA Tour wins. Always a kind of sneaky pick for majors and this kind of popular figure, right? And I don't think Minwoo Lee's shown the same substance as McIntyre has. Certainly not at the moment, obviously with the PGA Tour wins, but the consistency isn't really there for Minwoo Lee. So I think I'd be interested to see what trajectory he goes on as we get kind of into this new season. But enough kind of talking about, I guess, the players we're not going to bet. The first one up for me, and this was a little bit reluctant, 35-1 Thorbjørn Olesen. I'm a little bit concerned that I'm going to be following Olesen off of a cliff, but I'm willing to give him this one extra shot. I've always seen Olesen as like when you're in a deep field like this, because he's going to go off at kind of 14-1 and 16-1 regularly on the DP World Tour when he plays. Obviously, he's got the PGA Tour card, right? But he's going to go off at such short prices that you kind of got to. It's tough. You've got to buy low, sort of thing, but like buy high. But like when you look at the form towards the end of last year, 12th at the Dunhill Links, 2nd at the Open de France, he definitely should have won. 7th at the Andalusia Masters, 3rd in Abu Dhabi. Wasn't great at the DP World Tour Championship 24, but then flew right back into 5th at the Nedbank. The consistency that he's showing at this level is unbelievable. And then you look here, 4 top 10 finishes. Even in the past couple of years, been 16th and 21st, but he was 7th going into Sunday last year. I have all the faith in the world that Olesen can go and win an event of this magnitude. He's done it in the past, right?
Yeah.
And I do think it almost doesn't matter who he's playing. Like we saw him struggle to get over the line in the Open de France, but it's just him versus him, really, in terms of has he got it on the day, rather than I think he's worried about Rory McIlroy, John Rahm, and Cyril Hatton.
Yeah, I think he is one of the best in that next tier, right? In terms of upside consistency. I think when I think about him as a winner, he's very dependent on the putter, right? Like he's never going to be the best driver he's never going to be the best iron player, right? So like you need to catch a spike putting week and probably need help from the other guys. Like I think he's a great top 10, even an each way bet, you know, if you get 8 places, 10 places, things like that.
Yeah. I think with him, it's just, you have to sort of look back sometimes and remind yourself of like the people that he's beat. Like he beat Chris Wood for his first win, who was a good player at the time, Ryder Cupper, Victor de Buisson in 2014 again, similar situation. Sure. Brooks Koepka at the Dunhill Links. Beats Francesco Molinari in Italy in the year that Molinari wins on the PGA Tour and wins the Open Championship. And then you look at his last 3 wins. Soderberg is a different conversation, but Yannick Paul and Rasmus Højgaard, he tends to really raise his game when he's up against quality opponents. So not many there where he's kind of, I know the Ras Al Khaimah wouldn't have been like the strongest field, but Rasmus Højgaard's the best he could have beaten, right? And he beats him by 6 strokes. So I think just having that kind of extra gear in his game is really appealing. And I'm going to give him one more shot as we go into this new year.
Yeah, no, definitely makes sense. I don't have much bad to say about him other than it's going to be hard to win in this quality of field. But.
Yeah, for sure. Next up for you, Ryan, I know obviously you've talked about taking them in the kind of without market, so we'll give the kind of outright price as well as the price that you're taking them at.
Yeah, Akshay Bhatia, I took him without the leaders at 20 to 1. He was, I think he opened 35 over here. Might still be some 33s out there.
There's some 40 out there, which is great.
Oh, 40, yeah, 40 is good. I mean, I just think, again, you talk about guys who made a leap last year, like Bob McIntyre, like an Aaron Rai, right? I think Akshay is at that level, right? I think he's sort of borderline top 30 in the world, I would say right now. And I only expect him to get better. People forget just how young he is because he didn't go to college, right? He's a year younger than Aberg and all those guys. So we have a long way to go. But I really liked what he's done in the fall, right? He went over to the Dunlop Phoenix and almost won, finished second in Japan, finished 4th at the Hero, where he was pretty much top of the field in approach and putting. Always a good sign. Didn't play well at Sentry, but it was just the first 2 rounds. You know, he's young, probably had fun over the break. Maybe didn't grind as much as he would have liked to, but came back with 67, 66 the final 2 rounds. And I just think he's a top 6 player in this field potentially. And so the price was really big on Akshay.
Yeah, I think with sort of said this before we came on, like, I think the perception maybe around someone like an Akshay Bhatia is like, well, he hasn't played too much in Europe, like, I'll wait and see, as opposed to actually this guy is just extremely talented, has shown his game can travel, and is behind the curve in terms of trajectory. That's not the right phrase. But as you said, like behind in the years, the maturity levels of someone like Ludwig Aberg, right? That, like, there's nothing in my mind that suggests that by 24 Akshay can't have at least contended in a major. Like, I fully expect him to have a go this year at one. And that's essentially what Aberg's done ahead of him. He's been in a couple of, good moments on a Sunday in the majors. Yeah,
that's the last thing missing for him. And I think he's going to grow into that because Akshay is a really good iron player typically. He doesn't have the distance, which I think is what's held him back in those major championships. But I think that is definitely like the next step for him, much like, Max Homa and Xander and all those guys.
Yeah, and I think one thing that people will take away from this golf course, you do want top quality drivers of the golf ball, and that again, like the distance maybe isn't there. It's not necessarily there for Olesen either, right? Like I've actually gone a little bit opposite that in the sense, not intentionally, but just like not worried too much about this kind of big distance thing. But strong, long drivers of the golf ball are going to come out here more often than not. But I think sometimes a lot of that just plays into the quality of player that turns up as opposed to anything else, right? Like if I was comparing it to any event, I'd think about like the BMW International Open in Germany. We have a lot of crossover with that, and there's strong drivers going away there. And maybe people just want to stick to that formula. But for me, I was quite happy to take the players themselves at face value. And on that line of thinking, I've gone with Patrick Reed in the sense that a couple of reasons. One, I think he's just found a bit of form at the right time. Obviously, he wins the Hong Kong Open, not only with a third round 59, but like really strong scoring, 59-66 over the weekend, Open was 65. To keep your foot down after a 59 is really tough. So to him do that and then be 10th at the halfway mark the following week, finish 13th. And look, you should finish 13th and 17th in international series events if you're Patrick Reed. There's no getting beyond that. But like even the Open de España, he was 10th, he was 4th going into Sunday. I think he's really found that level. And then just on the kind of intangible side of things, he will worry about avenging that loss to Rory McIlroy here 2 years ago. Like, he is the type of person that plays on that extra bit of chip over his shoulder. The fact that he's got his first one, I think it was like the first one for like 3 or 4 years, right? And he hadn't had a win anywhere else. So the fact he's coming back to a golf course where he's been second in the past, he's played well in this part of the world, numerous good finishes at the DP World Tour Championships. He played well at the BMW International Open. I think he's had like second and thirds in the DP World Tour Championship. He's been all over the show on the DP World Tour. I really like how his game travels. I like the form that he's in. He does have that slight handicap that he's not going to be able to just bomb it like the other guys, but I think he more than makes up for that for the rest of his game.
Yeah, he's like you said, scrappy. He just gets himself in the mix, and when he is in the mix, he will find ways to get the ball in the hole. Right? He can be a good iron player. Has one of the best short games really we've ever seen. So yeah, no issue with Patrick Reed.
Yeah, 50-1 best price on Reed, 40-1 Batir, just for a roundup for those two. I just like, it's almost like a win only dart, right? Like, I'm not too worried about the injury factor with Reed. If he doesn't win, he might not place. It's that type of thing with him. We'll go next with you, just so I'm not talking too much. Your next guy up.
Yeah, well, I think based on current odds, we may have to go to Laurie Canter. We had a 90. I got a 90 on Monday, and then I bet him 45 in the market without the top four here. I think he's down to 50s in a lot of places.
There's 160 available. Generally speaking, 50-1, 55-1.
Yeah, I think that got hammered quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, Canter was one guy, much like I'll talk about next with Thomas Pieters, who looked like when he went to live and sort of left the tour, and not even as a full-time player, but he looked like he dropped off a cliff. It was gone. He was struggling on live. He wasn't getting starts, and then he sort of bounced back last year and then won the European Open, which was huge, right? Like, that was like, all right, this is what we have been asking for 5 years of betting Laurie Canter and seeing him never win. He didn't have the upside for the rest of the year, but I think those consistent, top 20, top 25 finishes. And I just think he's a good player. Like, I think he's a borderline Ryder Cup guy for me. It's going to depend what they do with their rules and stuff like that, but like that caliber of player. And he finished fourth here in 2021. So that was pretty encouraging. I just thought 90-1 was big for a guy who we know he's a great driver of the ball. That's sort of been the strength of his game, and I think that can translate really well here.
He has all the tools, right, to be. And I actually thought if he got himself a PGA Tour card, I thought he was the type of player that could succeed. You think about, again, another person that's associated with choking, and he definitely has in the past. He lost an Italian Open, I think, to Ross McGowan that week. It's not great, but and played poorly in the final knock-ins of the BMW PGA Championship at Wentworth. But again, has to put himself in that position. He's finished second there in the Portugal Masters, wins the European Open, to your point, fifth in the DP World Tour Championship in Dubai. He's finished inside the top 20 in an Open Championship in the past as well. He has all the tools to be a really good player, drives the ball brilliantly on his day. And it's just, how is he going to kick off this new year? To your point, like, just lost that kind of rhythm of like how to be a good player. Like, it's really hard when I think the idea that people are going to have this massive drop off just by going to live is a little bit overplayed. But when you're just this alternate player that doesn't know whether you're just playing because Sam Horsfield's not there, that's tough. Yeah,
and I think, again, not to harp on the live stuff, but I think now that he's settled, knowing he's back on the DP Tour and this is where he's going to be, I think that's going to help him stay in a nice rhythm this year.
Absolutely. That's a good time to just pause here and just give a quick note to our audio listeners. If you are not watching us on YouTube, you can follow us on Daily Fantasy Sports Picks and Bets The Mix, wherever you get your podcast, and then it'll be under the DP World Tour show. Looking forward to having you all along for the ride again in 2025. Really enjoy doing this. Kicking off with probably one of my favourite events, definitely one of the strongest fields we've got. Ryan, you're going to go into Thomas Pieters, and I'll let you go into there while we've got the rhythm there.
How long do we have?
As long as you like.
Any loyal listener of this podcast, between me and Sky, we have certainly talked Thomas Pieters a lot. So yeah, much like we just talked about with Canter, 2023 was a god-awful year for Pieters in terms of he went to live, he struggled, obviously, the motivation, whatever it was, just wasn't there. He really only had one relevant finish the entire year, and that was a sixth place finish right here. obviously he's done well at this golf course a couple of times and really bounced back last year, specifically the second half of last year, which was really encouraging to see. Finished 9th and 2nd in his 2 European Tour starts. Seemed to be playing a lot more golf, like playing the International Series events, playing obviously all the live events. Finished 9th in his last start at the Saudi. Just, I think, all pointing up. And again, I got 80 to 1. I'm sure he's a little lower than that now, but on a talent like Thomas Pieters, who again, we said this guy was going to play Ryder Cups, obviously played one a long time ago, but would love to see him back on that level. And for the live stuff, again, he just moved to the 4 Aces. Again, I don't know what any of this stuff means, but I have a feeling that getting off of the Range Goats team and getting onto a team with, DJ and Patrick Reed, like that will probably help in some capacity in terms of his focus and sort of overall motivation.
I think it's an interesting one with the team dynamics, right? And I don't know enough. I'm not close enough to it. My guess is that the Range Goats, there's a tight-knit group, Uline, Wolf, Bubba Watson, all very friendly. That's the reason Wolf's over on that team. It's not because of how well he was playing, right? It's how close he is to Uline and Bubba.
I mean, Uline's the best player on that team now, which is quite crazy. But
and I think Pieters making that move, as you said, to the 4 Aces and just being a very good player is important. Like just fitting in with the winning ethos of someone like Dustin Johnson and Patrick Reed is only going to help him from that perspective. Whether that, I still think he'll struggle. I still think it's just one that he's just never going to really commit to. I think he's going to wait until he comes on and gets these spot DP World Tour starts. But again, that's why you play, right? And when you can, and there is still an 80 to 1 out there, and it's a big price for someone of his capabilities. 54-hole leader the last time he played here. So absolutely on board with Thomas Pieters for sure. Next up for me, Nikolai Højgaard. He's coming to 55 to 1 now is the price. He was 66 to 1 earlier. And when I first saw the odds, I was like, right, he's double the price of Minwoo Lee. He was longer odds than Jordan Smith. I know he was ill and withdrew from the Team Cup. I don't really care. I feel like if you had a sore throat, you're probably going to pull out from the Team Cup. You're probably not that bothered. He's got nothing to prove to the Ryder Cup guys. They already know what he can do from the past one. And if he's in form, he'll be on that team, right? Like, I don't think it's going to matter if he plays the Team Cup or not. So there's not the same motivation for him in that respect. The one thing that I'm really keen on is just how his drivers come back into play. The last couple of starts, he's hit the driver well, and that's his bread and butter of how he's going to perform. Mm-hmm. He lost his approach play on the PGA Tour, that kind of abandoned him. But I think it's just a tough adjustment. He did play well in the Masters at the start of the season, but you just look at his sort of recent finishes toward the end of the year. 18th in France, where there's a lot of danger for someone that hits the ball the way he does. 20th at the Andalusia Masters, 9th in Korea, 13th in Abu Dhabi, where he's 7th going into the final round, and then 24th at a Nedbank was slightly disappointing. But you just look at his overall body of work in this part of the world. We know he's won the DP World Tour Championship. He's had another strong finish at that course. He's won the Ras Al Khaimah. He's got a 10th and a 13th in Abu Dhabi. Really just likes this part of the world. And then you look at the 7th here last year was his best performance. He was 5th after round 1, 4th after round 2. So really in that kind of mix. And I just don't think it's a really lazy take to compare him to his brother, but I just don't think there's quite a disparity between the two at 22 and 55 to 1, right? And then I don't think when you look at who's in the market, Minwoo Lee being dramatically shorter, Dean Burmester 20 points shorter, Jordan Smith the same price. Like, I actually am turning the corner a little bit on Jordan Smith and kind of getting sucked into that, but not it's the same price as Nikolai Højgaard.
Not in this field though. I wonder if the withdrawal from last week is factored into this price at all, a little bit for Nikolai, just because you would expect to see him probably at that 40 or 30 range in this field. I think again the biggest thing for him is like he just doesn't win that often and hasn't won in a long time. But we saw him do it at a very, very big event. Still bullish on him overall. Slightly concerned about the withdrawal because he was sick last week.
Yeah, I'm hoping it was just like one of those, like, I'm not that unwell, but I can't be able to play the Team Cup. It feels very much like that. Hopefully it's proven correct. But I as you say, like, hasn't not won as much as Rasmus for a start. He's not won as much as someone like a Thorbjørn Olesen, but he's got plenty of time to do so. But also just he has that kind of wide range of outcomes that make him an appealing outright. Like you can definitely see him winning by 3 or 4 shots and putting his foot down on Sunday, and you can see him missing the cut, right? Like there's a wide range of outcomes for someone like a Nikolai Højgaard. Yep. Before I come into my final couple of picks, one player that you mentioned was Keita Nakajima, and I've got a question mark next to him of just, I think he's comfortable playing here now, and I think he's ready to kind of perform pretty much anywhere, right? Like I think it took him a little while to kind of adjust, but and he's driven the ball pretty well, and that was like kind of my question: is he going to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a good putter too. A lot of these young Japanese players, I mean, we think of them as accuracy iron players, but they're also really good putters. He was the best player on tour for a month and a half last year. Like there was no doubt where he won the Hero Indian and then just sort of contended every week for a while. And then sort of fell off and then came back at the end of the year. But yeah, super bullish on him moving forward again. Can he win in this sort of field? Maybe not quite yet, but excited to see him sort of play majors and everything this year.
I think like the odds are 80 to 1. The only question mark is he going to win at this level? And the question is he going to win at this level at this time of his career against these players? Like I don't have any doubts that he can win at this level throughout his career. So it's just and to your point, like play really well in big events towards the end of last year, 13th for the Abu Dhabi, 7th for the DP World Tour Championship. And I just think like the gaining the strokes off the tee, which is something he struggled with in some of the bigger events like the Open Championship, the PGA, even the Olympics, like really struggled with the tee, played badly with his irons in those weeks. But when he's on, he pretty much gains across the board. And that's, I think, a really important facet of his game. So I haven't got to him this week. I kind of want to get a bit of a watching brief on him, but certainly with respect that he could be on people's cards. And then the other one I've got a question mark next to is Tom McKibben. And I think he's got the perfect game to succeed here. I think he's slightly overrated.
Yes.
I think so. I don't want to harp on the live thing, but like it's a really funny. You've got these people that think he's terrible and makes no difference whether he joins live or not. You've got the people that think they've got the biggest coup of the off season. They've got this young star, and it's going to ruin the DP World Tour. And then there's something in the middle where the DP World Tour suffers from losing a player like this. But my concern, and the first question mark, is like, I imagine he must have had this offer last year. I don't know what necessarily would have changed this year that he suddenly got it, unless they were just targeting higher players and they didn't get to him right. But the fact that he's gone now that he had the PGA Tour card, that concerns me. Of like, he probably wasn't 100% sure he was going to do that well there.
I think so. I think that's the biggest issue with it is, yes, you took somebody who was, arguably the best player on the DP World Tour, won a PGA Tour card, like that pipeline that they said they created. He got that opportunity that he was obviously going for and still left for live, right? But yeah, maybe it speaks to what you're talking about, the confidence that, he wanted the guaranteed sort of golden parachute and, schedule and everything like that, because as we saw last year between the DP guys, the Korn Ferry guys, it was hard to get starts. If you're not in the signature events, which obviously he wouldn't have been in yet, it's hard to get those PGA Tour starts. Yeah,
like it's just so disruptive. As much as it's a great thing to get, I think trying to balance the two tours, I think he's probably looked at someone like a Nikolai Højgaard. He's looked at some of the lesser players and gone like, he's probably more akin to like a Campillo at this time of his career or whatever. Like I know he's a slightly better player than him and got the more tools, but like probably Højgaard's that get the best comp, I guess. But Højgaard's won a lot more already. Like Tom McKibben's still only won once, and right part of the world. Like he's finished 4th in Qatar, 10th for the Abu Dhabi, 11th in the Dubai, in the DP World Tour Championship, 14th here. He's got the tools, drives it well. Just got that question mark of like, is he anywhere near as good as people think he is? I think there's just this instant connection with him and Rory McIlroy that everyone goes, oh, he must be the next great thing because he came from the same golf club as Rory. If he's as close to Rory as the media wants to portray he is, he's not going to live, right?
Exactly. Yep.
So
no, that makes sense.
It's definitely overplayed. But I also think that they're on the positive side for him. Maybe he's just looking at Hatton and just going, right, well, he's excelling with the shorter schedule and timing it for everything. So there's arguments for both. He might just think, oh, it's all going to get sorted soon, so I can just take a quick sort of payday, and maybe that's how he's being advised. There's a lot of different factors right at this point of moving to live. But I just think the confidence of maybe not being able to succeed at the PGA Tour level is slightly concerning me. If that's the case, and I just don't see how he comes out on top in a field with Rory and John Rahm in it.
I agree. Yeah.
I've got 2 at 100 to 1. Is there any more that you kind of wanted to discuss before we get to this range?
So, I mean, there was a couple. I didn't bet anybody out here, but I think one of the things that I'll be looking for start of this year is, the guys who played really well in the fall and winter, if they can hold that form over. And I mean, really just look at the winners. Like you look at a guy like Sean Norris, you look at a guy like Elvis Smiley, you look at a guy like John Perry who won. I think I'd be interested to see if they can maintain those, because a guy like Sean Norris, that guy's been around forever. He has won more than anybody across the world. Like, I think he's a world-class player, world-class putter. Interested to see if he can carry that momentum.
Yeah, so it's funny with Sean Norris, because you look at his record here, 61st, 56th, and 65th in 3 starts. But when he was 56th on his second start, he was 3rd after round 1. When he was 65th last time he played here 2 years ago, he was 4th going into Sunday and shot a 79.
We know he can shoot 80 at any point. So,
whereas someone like Parry, I just think he probably isn't going to play well here. Like, we look back to his career, he had 3 missed cuts. In great form, but I just think he probably struggles a little bit in this strength of field, and I think probably catching him early was the right thing to do. Smiley's a really interesting one, because there was a lot of hype around Elvis Smiley. Like, it was around the same sort of time, probably maybe before even like a Minwoo Lee and stuff, of just like how good this guy is going to be. It took him a while to win at the pro level, and then all of a sudden he's kind of won and never looked back. And the argument is we don't know what he's going to be like at this level, but there is no argument that he's got the skill set and the tools to perform at the biggest stage.
Yeah, and I think the most encouraging thing about Smiley is after he won, he had a couple of other really solid starts, one in Australia, one in South Africa. Yes, definitely interested to see where he goes, because that's a guy who you could see easily be a top 100, top 80 player in the world pretty quickly.
Yeah, because again, like even after he had that first win at the Western Australian Open or whatever it was, on the Australian Tour, that's his first pro win. And all of a sudden he backs up with the Australian PGA, which is a far stronger field, and all these guys going over. And then to your point, like backs up again the following week, 3rd going into Sunday, 14th in the Nedbank, pretty good considering he never would have played there, and travel things, all those sort of things. So I'm really excited to see what he does. I think he's someone that you can definitely bet in like the side markets with the top 20s and top 40s for something like this.
Exactly. Yep.
2 outrights left for me, and one of them's a little bit of FOMO, and one of them is just taking the plunge. The FOMO one is Paul Waring. I can't watch Paul Waring win again without being on, and I think it's a reach to think he's going to win again so soon in this quality of field. But he's playing as good as he can do. Like he's at the top of his game, right? He's finished 13th at this golf course in the past. He finished 3rd 5 years ago at this golf course. Final round 64, opening 67 to really put himself in the mix. We know he's based out in either Dubai or Abu Dhabi, I think it is. How impressive he was in Abu Dhabi, where shoots 64, 61 in the first 2 rounds, takes the 36-hole lead, stutters on Saturday with 73, and then bounces back with 66. I just thought that was really incredible. And then to your point, similar to what you said about like Smiley, so then back that up with a couple of decent results, nothing too spectacular, but he was 3rd after round 1 at the DP World Tour Championship, finishes 16th there, and then 24th at the Nedbank, where he was 8th going into the weekend. You suddenly get this kind of feeling with Paul Waring that actually he feels like he belongs, and it's taken to 41 years of age for him to do that. 39, whatever he is, he looks about 50, but his approach play is getting better as he goes along. The off the tee game is strong enough for someone of his ability and kind of age range, right? And it's just been a sustained period of form.
Yeah, and I think, again, I mean, that field that he won in last year was really no different than this field in terms of the upper talent with Hatton and Rory and those guys there. I'll always have a soft spot for him. I won his first outright, I think it was like 2018 or 2017, where he finally won something. So always have a soft spot there. But yeah, he's elevated himself for sure. Obviously played the Team Cup last week, which I'm sure he never expected to have an opportunity like that, which, anybody in there is on the Ryder Cup radar in some capacity. So I think it's certainly going to motivate him moving forward.
And played really well. That's
Yep.
the thing. I think he got 3.5 points, right?
Well, I think they all played really well on the GBNI team because that was not a fair fight. But yeah.
But one thing I would say about that is he played with Matthew Jordan for a couple of rounds.
Yep.
And that's no disrespect to Matthew Jordan, but it's not like he's been paired with Hatton or Fleetwood and just rode the coattails, right? Like he's played with someone of equal ability to him, if not inferior to him currently, and then just really dresses down Nigel Peterson, who didn't have a good week, to be fair.
Absolutely.
But I think at 100-1, I'm just taking a shot on a guy that maybe rides the wave, maybe has something still to offer in his career. And look, I mean, if he takes advantage of some of these early starts while he's still in the form, he's going to be on that Ryder Cup radar. And I think they're going to find every excuse not to pick him. And it's going to come down to him trying to get on points. But we see this all the time, this big, oh my God, we kind of hope he drops out of the points list towards the end of the season because we've got this guy on the periphery, or we don't want to have a controversial pick or whatever it is. But for him to go and show up in the way that he did was absolutely fine. He can only do what's in front of him, right?
Exactly.
So 100-1 I thought was pretty generous considering his current form. And then the other flyer was Brandon Stone, who has been returning to form, is a previously high quality player. And I think about they're not similar skill sets and they're not talked about in the same breath, but Brandon Stone and Matteo Manassero, I don't think is a completely different story, right? If you think about Brandon Stone, wins early and often 2016, 2017, 2018, loses in a playoff in 2020, and then just collapses. Manassero's was a lot more severe, and he also had higher highs, like winning at Wentworth, winning 4 in 4 years by the time he was 21 or whatever it is. But actually, when you break it down, like Stone's finished 12th in a PGA Championship, 35th in the US Open. Manassero's had similar major finishes. If you compare Stone winning the Scottish Open close enough to Manassero's kind of Wentworth win, I don't think there's a whole lot in between them. And they've had to take the same approach of humbling themselves, dropping back down to the Challenge Tour, working their way back. The difference is Manassero's already ahead of him. He's got that comeback win. He's played well in really strong fields again in 2024. And I just think Stone's on that similar trajectory again of returning to the player that we've got. And that's shown by his results, right? Like 10th in France, final round 64, opening 67. Andalusia Masters 17th, 9th at the Genesis Championship in Korea. 19th in Abu Dhabi, opens with a 66, closes with a 65. 18th in Nedbeck is fine. But then he was 5th after round 1 of the Alfred Dunhill in his last start as well. And you've only got to look at his course form. I mean, he's finished 2nd and 7th here. 7th on his second start, 2nd on his penultimate start here. I just think he's a high quality player who, had we been talking about him when he was kind of on the up, which I know is not the case, like you can't compare apples with apples, right? But like, I think he's getting close to that, and I don't think we're too far away from seeing Stone impress in bigger fields again.
Yeah, one of the things that I noticed about him last year, really towards the end of the year, is he seems to have improved his putting quite a bit. That was always not his strength. Pretty solid ball striker. I tend to target him obviously on link style, windy courses, harder courses more than anything. So if this is going to be another week where 12 or 13 under is good, which it very well might be. Let's ride the momentum from the fall because he was very impressive.
Yeah, look, like not all top 25s are equal, but 6 straight top 25 finishes to end the year. Like he's a confidence player. He's coming to a course that he knows well. He's played well in the past. He plays well in this part of the world as well, like many South Africans do, right? And I think that's really important. So the fact he's had a second here in this kind of company, all the confidence in the world currently. Let's just see where that takes him. Any other players that you kind of wanted to talk about before we wrap up here?
So, one for me, one for Sky. Sky wanted me to mention Jimmy Walker just because he had those couple of good finishes at the end of the year, tied 13th and tied 7th in France. I mean, look, he was a world-class player for a long time. His stats were fine. We know he can putt, which is a good thing. I definitely don't think he has any sort of winning upside here, but if you're looking for a top 20 dart, we saw him have a couple of those in the fall. But the other guy that I definitely do want to mention, just because, amateur name to watch moving forward, is David Ford. He's a senior at North Carolina, has been a top amateur really for 4 or 5 years. He's done well in some PGA spot starts. and he won his last two events in college in the fall. So form is good, drives it a mile and straight. Just another one of these kids who just bombs it off the tee. I think he's going to be the real deal. He's ranked 6th right now in the amateur ranking. But again, you're splitting hairs there when you get like him and Jackson Koivu and Ben James and Luke Clanton. Like they're all in that same category. So I love David Ford.
Yeah, for sure. I like that. Actually. I'm not really spoken about him at length. So that's really interesting. But also, number 500-1 chat, and Ben Coley put this up. I wasn't surprised at all when I looked at the stats. Like Ivan Quintero is hitting the driver incredibly. And if you're just looking for someone with the right skill set to have a good couple of rounds and finish top 20, top 40, I think he's someone that can kind of round up even like a DraftKings lineup. We don't necessarily look at that too much over the UK now, but first, fifth, second, and 29th his last 4 starts in strokes going off the tee. And even Rich Johnson's hit the driver really well in his last 3 of his last 4 starts as well. So if you just want people that are just driving it well, then they'd be a couple of names. Again, like I don't think there's any winning upside really. I think it's more of a this would be cool if he's in the running for 2 rounds. But I don't think you need to go too far down. No. Some of the names where I think the kind of prices are getting a bit big, like Andy Sullivan was showing a bit. He's 175-1, likes this part of the world. Again, I think there's a little bit of a handicap off the tee. David Micheluzzi, I thought about. We talk about him quite a lot on this podcast. He's 400-1. Joe Dean keeps showing up for whatever reason at 400-1.
Yeah. What about Patty? He stayed fresh playing Champions Tour stuff. He won one of their sort of last events in the fall and has played well here historically. 9th in 2022, 6th in 2021. So like not even that long ago. If it gets windy and it gets hard and we know that he added distance, like I feel like if he was like 9th this week, I feel like you wouldn't bat an eye at that.
And I think that 9th in 2021, like he was fairly popular going into that week. I think is that probably his first year maybe on the Champions Tour, or like he'd played well it might have been the PGA that year at Kiawah.
He had won, I think he had won a few times. I think that year he won like 5 Champions Tour events. So he was playing well, Like he was a popular pick in that, and like he's like even in the missed cuts that he's had in the last couple of years, 2 years ago, he opened with an 81, shot a 65 in the second round. Like he's that type of person that's not going to give up, right? So it's always fun to root for that type of guy. Yeah. Whether he's got enough in him to really make an impact remains to be seen. But it's amazing what kind of prices you can get this start of the year. Like Robin Williams further down the line will be a popular pick in South Africa. Connor Syme will be a popular pick at some point, 600-1. There's names here that we're going to back all year long that. I had to work hard not to bet Sean Crocker at like 500-1 this week. So
I have way too much Sean Crocker fatigue in my life. Like I convinced myself he was going to be a world beater at one point, and it hasn't quite happened. So I think I need to pump the brakes on him. But I'd be extremely happy to see him perform well.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Let's summarize our picks then. So if I just come on, I'm just going to look at the American odds just to make sure I'm giving you guys. The local audience, the best numbers there. So we've got Thorbjørn Olesen at 35-1, Patrick Reed at 50-1, Nikolai Højgaard at 55-1, and then we've got a pair of 100-1 shots with Brandon Stone and Paul Waring. Ryan, you've taken a slightly different approach in going without market as well as the outright.
Yes, and again, if you are somewhere where you can bet each ways, you can do these in the full market with each ways. I just, I wanted more win equity. So in the market without Rory, Hatton, Rahm, and Fleetwood, I took Akshay at 20-1, Thomas Pieters at 40-1, and Laurie Canter at 45-1.
Yeah, like I think we've got a pretty strong team there, strong drivers of the golf ball, whilst also mixing out with people like Patrick Reed who can kind of chip in from anywhere at any point and piss off anyone that's watching. So looking forward, I think it's going to be a great viewing event. I don't know about you, Ryan. I mean, you're maybe more committed than I am, but like towards the end of 2024, I found it hard to really get into golf. Some of the events like the South African swing, Mauritius, and then like the PGA Tour finishes, like it just felt a bit too much. Whereas like I'm really excited to get back into viewing this in a Saturday and Sunday morning for us over in the UK.
Yeah, I enjoyed watching golf the last couple of weeks out in Hawaii. That's nighttime, primetime viewing for us, which is perfect. Fall golf was slow. It definitely would have been better if Potgieter hadn't that Sunday lead away because we all had pretty large tickets on him there. So, but yeah, looking forward to this one. Really interested to see how the top end guys look. Rory, Rahm specifically. So.
And final thing, TGL back on tonight. Tiger Woods is playing for the Jupiter Links. There was a really strong outcry of like how good that was. I didn't watch it, so I don't have an opinion. I can't work out if it's like one of these like let's make it seem like it's really good to kind of boost the profile of it, or whether it was just that good to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think it went on a little long. I think if they probably need to tweak the format a little bit more, because I felt like those first 30, 40 minutes were really good. And then as you got to the hour mark, and then the format changed into singles and it kind of slowed down a bit. And also it just seemed like there was no energy inside, right? Like the crowd was quiet. Like I think that stuff they can work on, but I expect that to be ramped up a bit with Tiger playing tonight. So
do you have like any reservations of players traveling back and forth for this?
No, because I don't think it's real golf. Like this is something that like you can do with your buddies when you're drinking. Yeah, I don't think there's much to it. I'm surprised Kisner's here just because he's playing the Amex. So I would not bet him at the Amex or anything like that because he's got to fly across country tomorrow.
Generally speaking, I think they're going to work it around their schedules. But I'm pretty sure like Fleetwood's got to make a jump from like this event to the next one or something like that. I can't remember. There was definitely a series where they thought people were going to cross over in the same week. It's obviously an example, but really intrigued to see what the reception is like. It's definitely going to be good tonight because Tiger's playing, so there's going to be a lot of outcry for that. But thought we'd touch upon that before closing it. Ryan, thank you very much for joining us. Always a pleasure to have you on the DP World Tour Picks and Bet Show. Sky will be back next week, as far as I know. So looking forward, hopefully, to an early winner here, Baroff.
That would be nice.
And kick off 2025 in the right way, and then continue from there.
Sounds good, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much.